Welcome, my friends of the interwebs, and welcome back to part 3 of God knows what we're going to title this. But I'm here with my buddy Scotty D, a friend from childhood, from forever, and we're just talking some old stories. If you're here watching this, chances are you've watched the first 2. If you've not watched the first 2, go ahead and get those. And if it's not your gig, it's not your gig. Anyway, you were telling us, Scott, your dad wrecked your '84 Z right before you were going to the Army.
2 weeks before I was going to the Army.
2 weeks before you were going to the Army, and so then what?
Hey, I had no idea. I knew he was putting it back together for me. He felt terrible, obviously, and I knew he was putting it back together for me, but I had no idea. He was able to find IROC wheels. Now, in '84, IROCs that was the first low-profile tires you saw in cars.
Yeah.
And Gatorbacks. Everybody wanted IROCs. They wanted Gatorbacks. 50 series, believe it or not, 50 series was low. I know now you're running 30s, 35s, but back then 50s was a low-profile tire, and everybody wanted them. So he put it on. He put those on there. He was able to get the Recaro interior, the Camaro interior, and replace that with that. But the bottom line is he put the car back together, picked me up at the airport one day when I was coming in from the Army, and I was blown away by it. Now here's the cool thing about it. I took the car to American Custom here in Toledo. In American Custom back in the 80s, they did the Greenwood kits on the Corvette. They were world renowned as doing a good job and knowing what they were talking about. So I took the car over there, and I paid them $35. And when I showed up, I said, hey, look, I'm thinking about buying this car, and you could tell it had been repainted. You know, I mean, the paint, it was 6-foot deep black paint. And I said, you can tell it's been repainted. I said, the guy tells me that it's never been wrecked. I said, but I want to know why it's been repainted. And he said, sure. So I think it was like $35. And they measured all the measurements on it, the alignment. They got up underneath, put it on a rack. They took stuff out. They checked it out. They bring it back to me. This car's never even hit a curb. Car had been bent in half. It had.
Dude, that's how good Big Jim was.
I'm telling you, one of the best.
Yeah.
And here's an added funny to that story. He had gotten the car painted. And again, I was in the Army when all this was going on. He had gotten the car painted, and it was wet sanded. He was waiting to buff it. And it was sitting in the shop, and another guy was working on another car. I don't know, I think it was brown or gold or something. But anyways, he got a plugged spray gun, and that gun exploded and blew paint all over the shop, all over my car. That car had to be repainted a second time. He had to sand it and repaint it a second time.
See, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
huh.
Yeah. But in the end, let me tell you, it was called the Rag Toy. That was the plate that we had on it. And man, put a shift kit in it, cut the exhaust out of it. Ran a stall converter in it, like $2 grand.
Yeah.
It was just a really, really cool.
That stall converter would break your neck. I remember when you would shift that thing, I mean, wham!
Yeah, it was cool. It was a really cool car. I've been blessed. I've had some. The car I got now is what I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. Now you got an '84, or no, excuse me, a 2008 Mustang GT.
That's right.
Now let me ask you a question. Compared to the '79 TA and the IROC Z and all that, seriously, how do you think it stacks up?
It's heads and tails above all that. Performance, handling, braking, tires, all that. I really, as much as I loved my TA, it was a dog. I'll be honest with you.
It was
running a 6.6 400, but it was a '79. They didn't have the pollution figured out yet, and it was a dog. Very cool car. I got hated on all the time. I can remember coming out of a movie theater with dates, and there would be crowds of people standing around that car, and here this 16-year-old kid climbs into it and drives off.
Right.
I remember getting pulled over coming out of Brian and Keith Ray's house in that car. You remember that? We got pulled over that night?
You know what, dude? There were so many incidents with the police that I can't keep them all straight.
I got you. Well, we did. We got pulled over one night, and it coming out, and it was like 42 and a 35, folks. It was, you know, come on, man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, if this is what you're getting me for, you're missing the big stuff, okay?
Right.
But anyways, that cop, he gave me a ticket, and the reason he did was because he was mad. He was mad because I was a 16-year-old kid, and it was my car.
Right.
And you know, I got that from a lot of people, but and I worked hard, you know, to get.
No, yeah, and I always qualified that whole story with your first car is that you worked your ass off for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt
and that's
about
why I appreciate it. And when we sold it, we made money on the car. It looked as good as when it got finished because I I appreciate it.
Right.
These kids nowadays, you see a lot of these cars,
Right.
man.
Now, by the way, when I say incidents with the police, mostly it was them coming to my house to break up some keggers that Scott and I were throwing. We did throw some monster parties.
Parties got out of hand so quick. If Hunter was having a party, that's all. If a rumor got out,
Well, you had a high school with 3,000 plus kids, and yeah, and if I said I was having a bash, Dupree would tell everybody Hunter's having a bash. Dude, there'd be 500, 600, 700 people show up.
and he had a police officer live 2 doors down from his house.
Yeah.
And that deterred us none.
Yeah, no. And we would have multiple kegs. I mean, dude, we had parties with 4 or 5 kegs.
Yeah.
You know, and we're in high school.
We weren't 21. We might run behind, but we weren't that far behind.
No. Of course, that was back in the day before the Mad Mothers and all that
Well,
stuff.
it's about when it started, but
Just when it started.
And folks, I'll be honest, I do not condone drinking and driving.
No. But I'm not going to sit here and say I never did, because
No,
I
not
did.
an angel, that's for sure.
No. Well, it was a different time.
Yeah.
It really was. It was a different time back then.
Yeah,
No?
you know, and we were on the verge, for me as a hot rodder, back when you could wait late enough. You could wait till 11, 11:30, and you could get a clean stretch from one light to another and get a decent drag race in.
Right.
You can't do it anymore.
Well, cops were different then, too.
Yeah, they had lights on their cars.
Well, but not just that, but police a lot of them. Now, yeah, they wrote you a ticket for speeding a little bit, but for the most part, I can't tell you how many times, we would just get our beer confiscated. I mean, in today's world, somebody's got to go to jail. Like the parties I had, if in today's world you had a kegger as a teenager in high school and the police showed up, your parents are going to have to answer for that.
Yeah, there'd be court hearings.
Back then, they didn't even ask where your parents were. All they said was, everybody's got to go.
This is-
They would throw people out of the party and leave the kegs for us.
Yeah.
Half an hour later, people show back up, party keep going on. Yeah, it was a crazy time.
So, to compare the cars is hard. It really is.
Right.
So, in the Z28, it was one of the last carburetor cars. It was an HO.
Yeah.
But
Had a nice sound to it. I remember that.
Well, we cut the mufflers out of it. We
Right.
cut straight pipes on that. I'm doing that with my Mustang too.
Yeah.
Run straight pipes. But so it was coming from a dog era to where cars were starting to run again. So that was a big impression.
Yeah.
But now the Mustang is very refined in that. This trip is going to be probably 1,100 miles on that Mustang. Me and the Boxer, me and Quiz, 1,100 miles. And to be honest with you, it's not beating me up. It's not wearing me out. And I got 19 inches. I run 45 series tires. I got a lowering kit on the car, and it's very comfortable. And not to say those cars weren't comfortable, but and add to it, it's 300 horse.
Right.
It gets out of its own way. So
No, I drove it. It's sweet. It'll move. Now, are you kind of pissed off that Ford came out with that 6-cylinder with the 300 horse?
No, I'm more mad that Ford backed up on running the Mustang in the NASCAR series. They're running it in the Busch series. Excuse me, I'm old school, folks. So they're running in whatever the Busch series is now called. And I just think it would have been so cool to have Camaros racing Mustangs, racing Chargers.
Right. No, that would have been awesome.
That would have left Toyota out of the
Right.
party. They'd have still had a Camry out there running with them. But hey. It's our racing to begin with.
Right.
Get some history. I don't know what
right.
to tell you.
No, that's right.
But that would have been so cool, and I'm disappointed that Ford in the end is gonna still in the Busch series. You're gonna run the Mustang, but they're not gonna be doing it in NASCAR.
Do you remember a few years ago there was a rumor that they were going to come out with a Mustang that had the 351 Cleveland in it?
I wouldn't be shocked if there's not a place you could get a Mustang with a 351 Cleveland in it.
Yeah.
Any more crate motors, you can build.
Well, but from the factory, I guess is what I was thinking.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But they gave us the 05 to 09 Mustang, so
Right.
that was the 70, redone. And
Yeah.
my feeling is not just because I own one, but I think that Ford got that as right as anybody.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah, no, they did.
Yeah.
Though I will tell you that new Camaro is pretty badass.
It can be.
Well, what's funny, and just so everybody at home knows this, when Scott and I were growing up, Scott was always a GM guy. And I was always the one that was like Mustang. And the closest thing to a pony car I ever had was a 67 Cougar. And it's just funny to see Scott now rolling up to my house in a Mustang.
And understand, folks, my dad about disowned me when I called him. Told him I bought a new Mustang.
Yeah.
He wasn't happy. But here's two things. First of all, when I bought my Mustang, I wanted a rear-wheel drive V8 hot rod, and Chevy had been talking about the Camaro for 2 or 3 years, and it still wasn't on the market. Secondly, Ford, at the time, Ford was doing anything to sell me a Mustang.
Right.
So the price was right. And third, Dad was mad at me until he till I brought it home and he drove it.
Yeah,
and
he liked
then
it.
He wouldn't get out of the driver's seat.
Right.
He loves it. Now he understands why I did it. And in the end, they're the only ones that turned down the bailout from the government.
That's
so
right. They're not. That's
I
right.
appreciate
That's
that
right.
too, so.
Hey, anyway, listen, we might come back for one more, and we'll see. See ya.